All right, we are working on starting for my third attempt, T11 case problem 2, the math table, and I seem to be having some trouble with MindTap staying loaded, but I believe I have the solution. So what I like to do when I begin every assignment here is I open up my HTML in a new browser tab, and the problem I've been having is when I go back, it wants to reload, and I think I found the solution. So let me go back. And all right, so it didn't do it to me this time. There it is. If I change my screen, it seems to be correcting itself. So if you see me do that a few times today, it's because I'm having some sort of issue with MindTap wanting to reload itself. But that's the solution that I think is working. Just uh, restore and maximize the page over again. So I'm not sure what's causing it, but it seems to be working. So now that I have that, I'm going to drag this across and minimize that and get it out of my screen so I have more screen real estate for my code. And then, there we go. I like to have my JavaScript on the right-hand side. And then I'm going to minimize my file tree so that I can, again, maximize my code a little bit more and maximize my instructions. And then the next thing that I always do at the beginning of every assignment is read the summary and have a look at this image that they provide me. I treat these as if I'm working with a client. And of course, if I don't know anything about my client, I'm less likely to provide the solution that they want. And so I need to know a little bit about them and what they're looking for. And that's what the summary gives me. So carrying on, the math table. Teresa Kane runs the math table, a website containing math resources for homeschooling families and educators. Teresa wants to add an online calculator to the site and has asked for your help in designing a simple prototype. A preview of her page is shown in the figure below. Also, I like to click on this and get a full screen picture of the final final product. Okay. That way, while I'm working on the page, it allows me to see exactly what I'm looking at. And here I am having to reload again. All right. So that's been working. That reload trick has been working for me. The calculator is created using different form widgets. The calculator window is a text box area, and form buttons are used for each of the calculator buttons. The calculator window displays several lines of equations so that students can view multiple equations at once. To use the calculator, enter expressions by clicking the calculator buttons or by typing the expression into the calculator window. Evaluate an expression by clicking the enter button or by pressing the enter key. Clear the calculator window by clicking the delete button or by pressing the delete key. Remove the last character from an expression by clicking the backspace button or pressing the backspace key. Copy the previous equation listed in the window by clicking the previous button or by pressing up arrow key on the keyboard. And change the number of decimal places used in the answer by changing the value in the DEC box. That's this one right here, DEC box. So I have delete, backspace, previous, DEC, enter, and I have all these buttons right here, which I assume these are all programmed on their own. It doesn't look like they're programmed in here. And I don't think I have any other JavaScript code. Well, let's see. To aid in your programming the script for the calculator, Teresa has supplied the following functions. Erase character erases the last character from a text string. Okay. evaluate equation, eval EQ, which evaluates the equation in text string, returning a value to the number of decimals specified in the decimal parameter. So bar and lines equals text string. Ah, okay. So this is what's evaluating it. It's doing it very quickly. Eval last line. It's using eval. Okay. Using built-in function to just evaluate whatever the math is that's typed there. And last equation, which returns the previous expression from a list of expressions in the text string parameter again. Your job will be creating a fully functioning online calculator by adding the event handlers that respond to the user's mouse and keyboard instructions. All right, this function actually is doing the math. It's getting the last line, it's getting the last line there, doing the eval function, which is a built-in function. It's going to evaluate the solution. So we don't actually have to do the math. It's going to do it automatically, and then it's going to output with the correct amount of decimal places. All right, so our instructions are always the same. Read the page and get started. So, and I have just done that. Right? I open my HTML and my JavaScript, put my name and date in there. So 22nd. Okay. Go to the calc.html file in your editor. In the head section, create a link to the calc.css style sheet. Add a script element for the calc.js file. So I'm going to connect the style sheet. I'm going to copy and paste this previous style sheet and simply change the file name, calc.css. That should be sufficient there. And then for the script, right, I'm going to add the script, and this is the file name, mt_calc.js. You know that I like to copy and paste. That way I don't make the typo, because I do make a lot of typos. And they want us to load the file asynchronously, so we're going to use the async attribute. It's a Boolean attribute, so all we have to do is write the word, and that's enough to turn it on. We don't have to write any other values, but if we want to, we can write async equals async if we want to fully write it out, but just writing the word is enough to turn it on. And because we've included some CSS, our page should probably update. Yeah, there we go. That's all the CSS that makes this look like a calculator. Very nice. And I should be able to get my check mark for that. It was a pretty simple instruction. We're just getting started. And moving on, now we're going to actually start working with some JavaScript right away. And we're going to come down here. We have just a description of these functions, but we're going to put those in. All right. Directly below the initial comment section, right here, we'll find insert a command that runs the init function. This is the init, or initialize. Right. We're going to run that command when the page is loaded by the browser. So when the page is loaded, that's actually going to be the window.onload event. And we're going to set that equal to init. Now, take note that I'm setting it equal to the init function, but what I'm not doing is putting these parentheses there. If I put these parentheses there, what this is going to do is set the onload event equal to the result of the init function, or equal to the return value of the init function. I don't want to set it equal to the return value, because what that happens is it's going to, when the JavaScript is executed, it will then call that function, execute the function immediately, get a return value if it returns anything. If it doesn't, it's going to get undefined, and then set undefined equal to the onload event. That's not what I want to do. I want the init function itself to be set to the onload event. That way, when the window onload event triggers, then it will call the function. Okay, so big difference, just those two little characters make, whether we're going to call the function immediately and then set this equal to the return value of the function, or as we have it here, we're going to set the onload event equal to the function itself, and then when the onload event triggers, we'll call the function then. All right, so big difference there. This is the way we want it to happen, because if we do it the other way, then the init function triggers way too early. We don't want that to happen. We want to trigger it after the window has been loaded. That way we can actually access the HTML elements in there, because if we do this before the window loads, the HTML elements don't exist yet. It's not been loaded. So we want to wait for it to load and then trigger the init. Now we're going to create the init function, actually, or what's inside of it. Declare the calc buttons variable containing the collection of page elements belonging to the calc button class. Right, so we're going to make a variable called calc button for our calc button. Set that equal to a collection of elements of the page belonging to the calc button class. So we can do always document dot something, right? Document dot get elements plural by class name calc button. Okay, that's if we have a class name, we can do this way. Alternatively, we can do bar calc button equals document dot query selector. Oop, spelled it wrong. Query selector all. Okay, and this emulates more of a CSS query, and we can write dot the class name there dot calc button. These two will both return the same thing. Okay, our book is expecting us to use the first one. However, they're both the same thing. I'm going to comment out the first one and use the second one. If Mind Topics doesn't accept that, I can always switch it back. But I wanted to show you both of them. Moving on to my next step here, loop through the calc buttons object. Ooh, it's supposed to be calc buttons. I have an issue with singular and plural variables that sometimes I forget. Right, so loop through the calc buttons object collection. So both of these, it's this either document query selector all or document get elements by class name. It's going to return an array of all the elements that fit that class. Even if there's only one element, it's still going to be an array of one. It's always going to be an array. So we have to loop through that array, that collection, and for each button in that collection, each object in that collection, run the button click function in response to the click event. Okay, run the button click function in the response to the click event. That means set the click event to the button click function. That way, for each of those elements, for each of those objects, when they get clicked, we'll run the button click function. So if we want to loop through all of these, we can do a for loop. And that for loop is going to have an iterator value, var I. Traditionally, we use I for the iterator. I equals 0. We start at 0. We start at the 0 index of the array, and then move along until move along so long as I remains less than calc buttons dot length. That will be the length of the array. And so once I stops being less than the length, then we'll have reached the end of the array. And then I plus plus will just increment that I. So it starts at 0, and 1, and 2, and so on until we've reached all of the elements in the array, calc buttons. And for each of those, we're going to do calc buttons of the index I. So as I gets incremented, we'll access each index in the array. And we will set the on click event, right? On click event equal to the button click function. Now again, I don't want to put these parentheses in here and immediately call the function, because that will immediately call the function and then set the on click event equal to the return value of that function. That's not what I want to do. I want to set the on click event equal to the function itself referenced by name. Right? So that's going to take care of this step. And then they say after the for loop, add a command that runs the calc keys function in response to the key down event occurring within the element with the ID calc window. So we could use document.getElementById and find the calc window object, set that to a variable, and then use that variable to access and assign the key down event. Or we don't need a variable. We can just go ahead and do document.getElementById, and the ID is calc window. That's the element name or the element ID, and we can just use the dot operator now and do the on key down event and set that equal to the calc keys function. And remember, one more time, we're setting events equal to a function. We don't want to use the parentheses. We want to use the function itself we want to reference. If we use parentheses, then we have to execute the function to get a return value immediately, and the return value is what we're setting to this event. That's not what we want to do. Maybe someday that's what we want to do, but today is not that day. All right, so I have completed this entire step, event handlers. All right, see that? So MindTap was actually expecting me to use getElements by class name, but I typed it in, commented it out, and I used query selector all instead. They will function the same way, so long as you program them the same way. And I do believe that that's going to work out for me. Let's go on to the next step here. I think we're going to do the button click function, the next one in the list here. Now we're going to create the button click function. The purpose of this function is to change what appears in the calculator window when the user clicks the calculator buttons. See, all the calculator buttons, we've set their on click event equal to the button click function. And now we're going to define the button click function to actually do what it's supposed to do. So we're going to add the following commands to this function. Declare a calc value variable. Set it equal to the value attribute of the calc window text area box. So the calc window text area box. Oh, the calc window is a text area, and we're going to set it equal to the value of it. Okay. So declare a variable calc value equals the value from the calc window text area box. So that's going to be, we did calc window up here. I'm just going to copy and paste that. Document.getElementById calc window. That calc window element or object is a text area, and we want the value from that text area. So calc value is equal to the value we get from the calc window element. Next, we're going to calc decimal, or create a variable called calc decimal, var calc decimal equals the value attribute from the decimals input box. So this is going to be very much the same as the previous line. Right? It's not going to be the calc window element. It's going to be the decimals element, which is an input box, and we want the value of that too. So it's an input box in a form. It has the ID of decimals, so we want the value from that input box and set it to the calc decimal variable. And I assume next we're going to, maybe not immediately, next we're going to do something with these values. Each calculator button has a value attribute that defines what should be done with that button. So if we come into here, we see all these buttons. Each button has a value, and that value defines what it's going to do. So we have a delete button, backspace button, previous button. Declare the button value attribute equal to the value attribute of the event object target. So this is the event object. The button click is set to an event, and when you set a function to an event, you have the ability to have the event used as the first parameter or argument of that function. So each calculator button has a value attribute. We looked at that. That value defines what that button is supposed to do. Declare the button value attribute should be the button value variable. So we're going to do var button value equals the value attribute of the event object target. So the event object, that's this E right here. It is the event because we've set button click equal to an on click event. So E dot target, the target of the event is the object that the event is currently being triggered by. So if I click one of the buttons in this calc buttons here, the target of the event is the button that I have clicked. Okay, and for every event, pretty much every event is going to have a target, and the target is the object which triggered the event. Okay, so e.target, and we want the value of that target. Okay, so dot value. So once we e.target, this is essentially the object, the HTML object that's on the page. So it's going to be, if I click this button, this input calc button is the class. It has a value of previous. So if I click this one, the onClick event triggers. The event.target references this element itself, and then the value property of that references this string of characters that says PREV. All right, now we're going to do a switch case based on all the possible values. Okay, so a switch case is a really cool type of if statement or logic statement. and where we have a predefined set of things that is going to be there. So we know that all these values are going to be delete, backspace, previous, etc. Um, and so we know exactly what they are ahead of time, and we can write a switch statement that is a little bit easier to read by humans, and a computer may process them a little quicker as well. So we're going to switch based on the value of the button value variable, and then we're going to have a list of cases, a list of potential values that it will be. Uh, for the case del, delete the contents of the calculate window by changing calc value to an empty text string. So if the case is del, the string del, and we have a colon, and then we can write what we're going to do in this case. So in this case, we need to change the calc value to an empty string, calc value. That's this variable we just created up here. We're going to make this equal to an empty string is just two quotes with nothing in there, not even a space. A space would be something. We want empty. Okay, and that's the only thing this one is going to do. So at the end of each case, we need to remember to break afterwards. If we don't break, whatever we write in the next case will also happen when this case gets triggered. So we need to break. Sometimes that's actually what you want to happen, but usually it's not. Usually you want to break after each one. So the next case is backspace, BKSP. And in this case, we want to erase the last character in the calculator window by changing the calc value to the value returned by the erase character function. Okay, so the erase character function is already made for us, and what it does is it pulls off the last character in a string and returns whatever's left. So we want to take the calc value and set that equal to the erase character function when that function operates on the calc value variable. So we're going to take the calc value variable, pass it to the erase character function. It's going to pull off the last character in that string and then return whatever's left, and we want to set the calc value equal to that. So we're just going to pull off the last character in that string. And that's all we want to do in this case as well. So we need to remember to break. And then the next case is enter. Oops. Case, and enter is the full word enter. Great. And in this case, calculate the value of the current expression by changing the calc value to the string equals plus the function evaluate equation, taking the two parameters, both the calc value and the calc decimal, and then we want to add a new line character to that, or a line break. Right? The new line character is used to add a line return at the end of the answer. If you don't do that, then as it progresses, it's just going to build one long line. We don't want to do that. We want to add a new line character at the end of each one. So we're going to have to set the calc value equal to, we want to have the equals in the actual result because we're setting it equal to a human readable instruction here. So the equal sign plus is actually going to concatenate. It's not going to add, it's going to stick two strings together. So eval eq, that's the function name. And the arguments we're going to pass are exactly as we have right here. Calc value, the eval eq function takes two arguments, and the calc decimal, these are the two variables that we have just created. And then we're going to add that new line character right at the end of that when you put the new line, make sure you do the backspace and not, or the backslash and not the forward slash. They're not the same thing as each other. You want to use the correct one. The backslash is the one that's above the enter. If you can't remember, or if you're new, you have a hard time remembering which slash is which, we read from left to right, and so the forward slash is like if it's standing up and it's leaning forward in the direction that you are reading, and the backslash is leaning backwards in the other direction. That's how I remember which one is which, by name anyway. Um, by looking at them, I know which one is which because I use them a lot, but sometimes I don't think of the name in my head actually. Next case is the previous case, previous, and in this case we're going to copy the last equation in the calculator window by changing the calc value to the value returned by the last equation function, and we're going to use calc value as the parameter for that because the last equation function, which is also down here, it takes an argument, so we're going to have to give it an argument when we call this function. So calc value will be set equal to the last equation function. But we want to remember that that function needs an argument, and that argument is the calc value of the variable again. And again, we want to break at the end of our case. And then we have this last one here that says, otherwise, append the calculator button character to the calculator window by letting calc value equal calc value plus button value. So button value is whenever somebody clicks a button, it has a value, right? All these values. So the numbers and the parentheses and the other symbols, right? For all of these, the action we're going to take is the last case is actually called default, right? If none of these were the value, the button value, then the default is for all other button values is to take, like they've said here, calc value equals calc value plus button value. It's not going to add them, it's going to put button value on the end of calc value and just keep concatenating along. Right? So as the user is clicking on those numbers and they're typing, we're going to add those numbers to that string of characters. And actually in my answer key here, I have a break at the end of the default. You don't need that. And the reason you don't need that is because we are actually at the end of the switch statement. And so it's going to normally just end the switch statement anyway. We don't need the break. Because the break, all it does is end the switch statement. And you don't have to end it right before the end. That's it's going to happen anyway. Let's see. After the switch case structure, set the value attribute of the calc window text area box to calc value. So we've gotten this calc value at the beginning of our function. We got it from the calc window text area. And then during the course of this function, we have in some way updated the calc value. So we are going to set the calc window to this new updated value. So essentially, this line right here, we're going to do the reverse of that. So we set calc value equal to calc window.value. We're going to set calc window.value equal to the calc value. Let me get rid of this var keyword. Okay, so at the beginning, we got the value from the calc window element, set it to our new variable calc value, did something to it, and now we're going to put it back where we got it. this new updated value. We're going to put it back there. Right, so that's this. And then, then we're going to run this. We can just copy and paste this right into our program, except this looks like left and right curly quotes here. Those are not going to work in our function, in our program. So I am going to copy and paste my own code. Right, we're going to do the focus command, focus method, and put the cursor focus within the calculator window. So every time someone clicks any one of those buttons, this command is going to happen. It's going to get whatever value is in the calculator window, assign it to the calc value. It's going to get whatever value is in the decimals input box, assign that to the calc decimal value. It's going to get whatever value was stored in the button itself, the button that was clicked. Now we're going to do all this, and it's going to change calc value in some way depending on what button was clicked. And then we're going to take the result of that, stick that back in the calculator window, and then we're going to set the focus to the calculator window as well. So this sets the cursor, the focus, to that calculator window. And there may be some CSS that styles it differently when it has focus. I don't know. I haven't done this assignment yet, but we'll see that. Once this runs, we'll go into the program, into the actual page, and see what it does. Create the init function was a function on its own, and then button click was a check mark on its own. I hope I can still get this one, even though I've gone past it already. All right, and I've done the button click as well. Let's see if I can get that one. I have not done everything on this page yet, though. So I might not get this last one. Nope, I didn't get this last one. There's a lot of things. Enter displays the result of the calculator window. Previous copies. Let's see. We've gone down to here. Next, let's try this next part and see what happens. Next, you'll control the keyboard actions within the calculator window. Teresa wants you to program the actions that will happen when the user presses the delete, enter, and up arrow keys. So this is enter, and previous, that's the up arrow. So that's why I didn't get this right yet. So I have to do this bottom part. As you did in the button click function, declare the calc value. Oh, I'm going down to the calc keys function now. Declare the calc value and calc decimal variables, just like I did in the button click function. So if they say the same, just like I did before, I'm literally going to copy and paste. Done. All right, I did it once. I'm copying and pasting. So long as I did it right the first time, it will also be right this time. I want to fix my spacing here, though. It's going to, with this space change right here, it's going to operate differently, but I want it to be human readable, because if this was a real project, in 6 months I may need to come back and do some maintenance. So I want it to be human readable. Let's see, create another switch case structure for different values of the key attributes of the event object. Okay, so the event object, we have an event object on this one again. Calc keys is on key down, the calc keys gets triggered. That might get triggered by the focus. I'm not sure, but I think that might get triggered by the focus. So we're going to make another switch case. So guess what? I'm going to copy the previous one and just change all the contents. Okay, and actually I'm going to delete all the contents. And this is for the the key attribute of the event object. So the event object is called E. We get that from right here. And the key attribute, or the key property. Okay. Now, based on my cases, for the delete case, whoops, I need to type it exactly as it should appear. So this is uppercase D and delete. Erase the contents of the calculator window by, oh, this is just like I did before. I could have left that one. The next case, see, change the calc value to an empty string, just like I did before. And then on the enter, it's almost equal to the previous one. So I'm going to copy that, paste that in here. But this is enter with a capital E. So I need to fix that. And then add the following expression. Calc value is going to be set This is not very conducive to being human readable. Calc value, in my answer key, it actually says it's supposed to be plus equal to this here. So we're going to try that. It just has this colon here. So my answer key says plus equals though. So we're going to do that. And then we have equal sign, just like we had before. Evaluate equation, just like we did before, but no new line this time. So we're going to get rid of that. Everything else is kind of the same on that. And then for the arrow up, that's actually the previous, like we did before, but it's called arrow up. Copy and paste a word arrow up. We're going to set the calc value equal to, again, it says calc value plus equal, last equation, calc window dot value. Calc window dot value is calc value. So I'm not sure why they wrote it this way, but the value of calc window is calc value. That's what we set already. And then enter a command that prevents the browser from performing the default action in response to the user pressing the up arrow key. So before the break, we're going to do, we want to prevent the default action that's on the event, and we press E and we get all these options right here. I don't see prevent default in this list, so I'm just going to type it anyway. Prevent default. Right. And that is, I am going to call the actual function when this happens. So I am going to use the parentheses. Okay, so E is the event when the calc keys gets called. Remember, we set it up here to the on key down. So when the event gets called, we can access the event itself and prevent the default action from happening if it was an arrow up. So normally, when somebody presses the up arrow, that will change the element that's being focused and go up. Or if we're inside an element, it will go up in the, like the text area will go up to the next line. We want to prevent that from happening, and we only want what we've programmed here to happen. Okay, so then at the end, after the switch case structure, there's no default this time, did not told us a default thing to do. After the switch case structure, set the value attribute of the calc window text area box to calc value. So just like we did before, set the calc window value to this new updated value. So we have two functions, button click and calc keys, that are doing like almost the same thing. Very little difference between the two of them. And let's see if we can get the check mark from our little robot friend. Find out if he has a name one day. This one's taking a while. No. All right, I have the same two things, the enter and the previous. Let's see, what are they looking for? Oh, I see. Okay, so in here, actually, for enter, they have wanted me to do plus equals on the enter and previous. That is what my answer key says. And the same, I've got it done right here. Calc value equals calc value plus button value. Let's do the shorthand and do plus equals. Calc value plus equals button value. All right. That should do it. I did have a typo. Maybe I must have misread this. For the enter, calculate the value of the current expression. Oh, I see. It wasn't super obvious. They didn't explicitly state, but if I'm going to put the equal sign in the answer, I want to leave the expression and add the expression equals and then put the answer. So they didn't make it obvious that that's what they wanted, and that's why I got it wrong. But there it is, and now it's correct. Good thing I have an answer key. They were not very descriptive on step 3 and 4 right here. And then this last one, I didn't even get tested on it. Verify and validate, I'm at the end. Right, so let's go check out our thing, refresh my page, and let's see how it works. So if I was to do 1 plus 1 equals 2.0000 because my decimal is at 4. So let's change my decimal to 0 and hit enter again. Nope, previous, enter. There we go. Backspace, backspace. All right, let's do 2 times 2. Let's do oh, I broke it. We can't do math in like human readable math form. We actually have to type out all the assignments. So the eval is not going to 2 times 3 plus 1. There we go. So 3 plus 1 is 4 times 2 is 8. So we do have to write that times in there. It's not a super advanced calculator. Or we can change our size of our calculator because it is a text area. Way cool, right? And the delete key deletes everything. So we made that happen. All right, there is that. And all right, my page didn't refresh. And see, because we're doing this right here with the focus, every time we click a button, the button click function. At the end of all this, we take the focus and we put it in the calculator window. So you can see my cursor is here. And every time I click a button, it puts the cursor back. It does it and then immediately puts the cursor back in there. So that was cool. And then the calc keys function, which is set right here on key down in the calc window. It's going to basically do all that same stuff there. +1. Let's see if I comment that line out. I'm getting curious. All right, 1 + 1 still works. I comment out the focus. Now, when I start typing in here, now you can see my cursor isn't there. Okay, it still works, but I don't get my cursor there unless I click in it. And the calc keys function isn't really doing much. Which makes sense. We're not even being checked on this function. All right, well, that is T11 case problem 2, the math table. We've made a calculator. So if you ever needed a calculator, there it is. But I suppose if you have a computer, you should probably already have a calculator built in. But there it is.